Hey, welcome back. I feel like it's been a while. What's it been, like 2 months or so? Yeah, it's not too bad. I've done worse. I'm Sage Man, and this is the Little Mermaid retrospective. The third and final season of the Little Mermaid TV series aired in the fall of 1994 and was the shortest season of the show with only 8 episodes. So we'll be doing 4 today and 4 next time, and in the 10th and final installment of this retrospective, I'll look back on the entire series. For those of you just joining us, this is part of the Keys and Kingdoms project, gathering inspiration for a fantasy universe and role playing game based on all things Disney. One that feels like Disney, not actually being Disney, because I don't think Disney is ever going to make a big crossover role playing game set in their universe. I mean, there's Kingdom Hearts, which is okay and all, but I mean like a real role playing game that really feels like you're living in a Disney land, yeah? For the bulk of that project, you can find the Keys and Kingdoms analyses of all Disney's major films of the 20th century in Season 1 of the Tapas podcast. Check the channel for that. Since the Keys and Kingdoms segment has been eating up just so much of the podcast as of late, once Season 1 of the podcast is over, the Keys and Kingdoms segment will be spun off into a Keys and Kingdoms podcast, while the Tapas podcast can hopefully readjust to be more about life in general. Let's head on into Season 3 of The Little Mermaid. The first episode of Season 3 is entitled Scuttle. An apt title, lets you know what you're getting into. Major character from the film who hasn't appeared in the show yet. I'm gonna make the assumption that this episode will be about the day he and Ariel met. I think I've seen this one before. I remember the song that Scuttle sings. I don't know if Scuttle is in any additional Season 3 episodes, but I've got a good feeling that the song I remember is from this one, because he's asking Ariel to take a chance on him, so the context suggests to me it's from the episode when they first meet. Now, while Buddy Hackett was the original voice of Scuttle, and would return several years after the end of this show in The Little Mermaid 2 Return to the Sea, here in the TV series, he's instead voiced by Maurice LaMarche. These parameters are acceptable. Maurice is a top-notch voice actor who's especially good at the celebrity impersonation side of the craft. It'll be like Buddy Hackett is right there in the room with us, I'm sure. So they changed up the title sequence a bit for Season 3. The bulk of it is new clips. I can't remember if they did that between Seasons 1 and 2 or not, if they changed anything there. Nothing big enough for me to notice. We open on a sea battle where some pirates attack some non-pirates. These pirates are absurdly by the book, and I hate it. Point is, a golden goblet falls off into the sea. Come upon Ariel, Sebastian, and Flounder riding on the back of a humpback whale as it migrates with its pod. Flounder now played by Bradley Pierce, maybe? I guess I'll find out. Ariel spots the shimmering golden goblet at the same time as Scuttle does, and they both grab it, one above the water, one below. Scuttle wins the scuffle, identifying the object as a dwarf burble. Ugh, this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. I don't like made-up nonsense words, I just don't. I have refused to say most of those that Ariel has made up over the course of this show because they're too stupid. Suffice it to say, all of Ariel's names for human items end in majigger, and I hate it. I like high fantasy, because good high fantasy knows how to make its made-up names not stupid. Sometimes Star Wars doesn't succeed at that. Anyway, still in the inciting incident of the episode, and I've ended 2 sentences with, and I hate it. I hope that's not an omen. I don't hate this show. I want it to succeed. I mean, I know it ended 27 years ago, but a life in reruns on Disney Plus is a kind of succeeding. They probably monitor that, right? How many people watched this show? And the people at the Disney Plus sweatshop go, hey, people are watching the Little Mermaid cartoon series. Ain't that sweet? Ariel pursues Scuttle to a lagoon, otherwise inhabited by, what are these, vultures? The trio profess a fear of birds. I suppose that would be a pretty foreign, scary thing to fish folk, I should say. Scuttle, this appears to be the same place he lived in the movie, right? It hasn't gone far, I guess, that we never saw that this grove of mangrove trees is so very nearby it in the film. Scuttle claims that the purpose of a dwarf burble is as a place for humans' favorite birds to sit, which, okay, Scuttle's supposed to be a seagull, right? Flounder calls him a seagull in the film, but seagulls are very small birds. He's a goddamn big seagull. I'd call him an albatross, almost. I don't think he's big enough to be an albatross, though, but he's certainly closer to an albatross than a seagull. Don't know if you've ever seen an albatross, but they're basically seagulls, but real fucking big, like 4 feet tall. My point is, Scuttle would actually fit in the Dorfburble if he was a real seagull. They make a big production about how he's too big for it, but he shouldn't be. Disney never met an animal it didn't want to completely redesign. It's, I don't know, that bothers me now and then because I like animals the way they are. They're beautiful. Ariel observes that Scuttle knows all about humans, at least he acts like he knows what he's talking about, and this gets them bonding for a moment, and then Sebastian is kidnapped by a bald eagle. You think I made that up? No, that happens completely out of nowhere, right in mid-conversation. The bald eagle, those majestic raptors that very famously only come from North America, here in a mangrove forest in Denmark, which might actually... Does mangrove forest scenes in Kiss the Girl contradict the apparent Danish setting? Maybe those people who say the story is set in a Danish colony in the Caribbean are onto something. Scuttle can't rescue Sebastian because he's weighed down. He can't fly because his ass is stuck in the Dorfburble. Did you really just make me say that? Was that a plot summary of this episode? Jesus Christ. Okay, no. Scuttle manages to... He gets his butt out, and then Sebastian attacks the eagle. It drops him. He ends up on the pirate ship. That's the plot. Really? We're sticking with a pirate ship? Ugh, these guys, these pirates, they suck. They're like the 40 Thieves from Aladdin and the King of Thieves, only so much more suck. Season 3, what are you doing to me? I remember this line. A good line. Sebastian ends up in the boot of the pirate captain and remarks, "The worst kind of humans. The kind with feet." That's funny. He's the kind of pirate with a peg leg, so he only needs the one boot. So Sebastian's safe for a second there. Peg legs, eye patches, hook hands. Pirates certainly seem to lose a lot more body parts than most people, don't they? Sebastian is left alone in the captain's quarters with the captain's very evil-looking parrot, Salty. The pirate ship moors, I don't know, someplace, and Ariel and Flounder mostly ignore Scuttle's bombastic stories about having once been a pirate captain himself and seek to rescue Sebastian. Scuttle sings the song I remember, "Just Give Me a Chance." It's a shockingly complex song. Hats off to whoever writes the songs in this show. You dug a gold nugget out of that brain of yours. I know the feeling. I'm not a very good songwriter myself, but every so often I produce something that's actually impressive. And Maurice's singing is really good too. It can be hard to carry a tune while doing a character voice, and I've heard Maurice LaMarche struggle to do so in the past. Brain from Pinky and the Brain, for example, isn't a very good singer, but he doesn't miss a note here. He keeps the Buddy Cackett impression going while singing, and there's a lot of notes to hit in this little ditty. So, now they have someone who can fly to get Sebastian, so easy enough plan. Why does it take them until nightfall to implement the plan? Why is one pirate in the background here a Goomba? What? So Scuttle beats up Salty and takes his place. Okay, that's funny. And he asks the captain where the crab is, but the captain isn't amused since Salty's been talking about the crab all day, so he's sick of it. Is that the end of Scuttle's involvement in the plan? Because that'd be real funny. Ugh, these pirates suck so much. Sebastian gets on the wrong end of a swarm of ship rats, and I mean a swarm. There are so many of them, and they're so evil looking. These are some killer shrews right here. But Scuttle saves him, almost. At least gets him out of the ship, but drops him in a barrel of flour. The rats still pursue, and Sebastian is now ghostly white. Do the pirates believe he's a ghost crab? Is that what's going to happen here? No, the flour comes right off. It's just for a brief joke where Sebastian sees his own reflection. It's like, ooh, for a second I thought I was a ghost. That's lame. It's not worth it. They get out of there, and as the sun rises, the pirates attack Prince Eric's ship, hoping to hold him for ransom. Ariel and Scuttle still disagree on human terminology, the only one either of them ever get right being the word ship, which Scuttle favors over floatamajigger, the term Ariel's been using all series. Scuttle fetches from his collection of human stuff a battle axe. A Schlaven, I believe he called it, and Ariel uses the axe to disable the rudder of the pirate ship, allowing Prince Eric's ship to scuttle the pirates and escape. Scuttle. Prince Eric tells Grimsby he thought he saw a beautiful mermaid. They return to Scuttle's home, where Ariel is eager to discover lots more wrong information about human stuff. So that was fun. Cast? Eden Gross is still Flounder. When does Bradley Pierce take over? maybe he doesn't. Maybe every source of information about Disney character voices is wrong, and it's actually Eden over the course of the whole show. It's amazing how wrong people can be sometimes. I mean, Eden is still in the credits. It'd be so easy to prove that Bradley Pierce was never the voice of Flounder, and yet it would remain in some people's heads forever. A popular, kind of a legendary internet event surrounding that is about the cartoon Street Sharks. In one of the earliest databases about cartoons in the internet, some guy, as a prank, decided to make up a bunch of information about street sharks that was never true, and many sources still continue to report that completely fake crap about street sharks as fact. It's kind of a scary thing about the internet, I guess, that anyone can make something up. Anyway, I still don't know if Bradley was never Flounder. I guess we'll find out. Maybe Eden had a big voice break while Season 3 was still in production. I figure they work on no more than one episode a week, right? Or, maybe it's just a misconception because Bradley Pierce has been in a few episodes of the show as other child characters. Maybe he's never been Flounder at all. So guest stars in addition to Maurice LaMarche as Scuttle. There's Jeff Bennett as Eric again. And I'm pretty sure Grimsby hasn't been in the show before. I don't remember him being there the last time we saw Prince Eric. Maybe I'm wrong. I did take like a year hiatus off this retrospective at one point. Anyway, Grimsby is voiced by K.E. Cuter. I've never heard of him. Looks like he was a prolific performer dating back to the 50s. He sounds pretty close to Ben Wright's version, and unlike Jeff Bennett as Eric, Cuter as Grimsby returned in the sequel. From there we have Greg Berg, Ed Gilbert, and John Cassier. It's assorted pirates, I suppose, and one of them had to have been salty. I would guess Cassier, but yeah, I don't really have any idea. I'm pretty sure that Greg Berg and Greg Berger are two different voice actors. If so, they've both been in this show. I wonder if they've ever been cast in the same episode of something, like been confused for each other. Let's see, who does write the songs for this show? Randy Peterson and Kevin Quinn, at least they wrote the song in this episode. Those names mean nothing to me. Next episode is called King Crab, and the plot summary says it's about Sebastian lying to his parents that he is the King of Atlantica. Well, that can only lead to cliched sitcom cringe. Let's dive in. If Sebastian's parents sound like they're from Minnesota, because parents always do in plot lines like this, I'm going to be pissed off but not surprised. Please let them be Caribbean like their damn son. It's bad enough not one other crab, or anyone for that matter, has shared Sebastian's accent. We open with a bunch of sea critters, among them Ariel, waiting for their postal worker, the Snail Man. Week. Sebastian, meanwhile, is writing a letter to his parents about how he keeps Atlantica running more or less single-handedly. He gives that letter to the Snail Man and receives one in return from his parents, expressing their pride in him for exactly what he just now wrote. So, this is a recurring thing. Not at all the kind of thing you can misconstrue. The letter also says they'll be coming to visit him in 6 months. And they show up right that second, because snail mail. Fuck it. If I was writing a television spin-off of a movie with a level of production quality this much lower than that of the movie, I'd be writing very cheap plots and jokes too. It's nobody's fault, really. Okay, awesome. His mom sounds Caribbean, though she looks like the typical Minnesota mother, and looking it up, voice actors, Sebastian's mama is Hattie Winston. Never heard of her before, but she's had a very respectable television career. And does his dad not talk? He just stands around being a slack-jawed yokel? I mean, maybe that's better than them being stereotypically Jamaican, but it's weird. I don't even know any stereotypes about Jamaican women or mothers. Well, judging by what the stereotypes are about Jamaican men and fathers, I would guess, all the ugliest stereotypes about black Americans, but more so. Meanwhile, Triton's off to sign documents somewhere far away. Keep telling yourself that, man. Whatever gets you out of our hair so this plot can happen, bro. And there's a running gag about Flounder being obsessed with pens and stationery and sending letters. I don't know. It's maybe more a cute character quirk than a running gag. I like it. So Sebastian introduces his parents to Flounder, Ariel, and Urchin. And yes, we quickly discover their misconception that Sebastian is in fact the king. Now, hey, he does speak. Sebastian's dad speaks, just not until he's been on screen for a while. IMDb doesn't say who voices him. I'm going to take a stab and say maybe it's Samuel E. Wright, who also plays Sebastian. That seems reasonable. I heard Jim Cummings earlier as a sea critter waiting for the mail, so I thought maybe he'd be playing the dad, but no, that's not him. Listening real carefully, yeah, I'm going to say that's Samuel E. Wright, doing his Sebastian voice, but much deeper. I wonder if Urchin is supposed to look like he's gotten older since season 2, or if the animation is just way off model. So Sebastian prepares to confess to the misunderstanding, but the expectant look on his parents' faces make Ariel and Urchin decide to just go along with it. Ariel providing one of her combs as his crown, and Urchin giving him a King Triton-themed novelty pen as his trident. Urchin says Sebastian's task today is to inspect the outer regions, cleverly keeping him away from the kingdom where the deception might be unveiled. Flounder pulls the crab-sized royal chariot. Unfortunately, the outer reaches thing doesn't work out perfectly, because there are some Sharkanians lurking around Atlantica's borders. Didn't expect we'd ever hear from them again, and they take the Sebastian is King of Atlantica talk at face value and report back to Emperor Shaga. Real nice voice acting from the Sharkanians. You got these two that are the scouts. One is definitely Jim Cummings. The other sounds super familiar and very cool, but I can't place him. Same with Shaga's commander, whose name I did not catch. He's also sounds familiar and cool, but I don't know. Emperor Shaga comes back, and, a bit of an expanded role than what he had last time. Something about Jim Cummings doing a Marlon Brando impression to play a cartoon shark that vaguely resembles Brando. It's very Winnie the Pooh. I think that might permanently alter my perception of Marlon Brando. Vito Corleone will now forever remind me of Winnie the Pooh. Yeah, the Don strikes me as the kind of person to take that comparison better than most people. Better than Xi Jinping would, at any rate. Shaga thinks the apparent transfer of power is a good opportunity to strike. I appreciate the joke here where Shaga's first line is constructed in such a way that he does not end his sentence with a preposition. And his advisor compliments him on his grammar, and Shaga thanks him for that. Shaga whips out his new secret weapon, the magic lump. A big blue lump of stone, and smashing it grants a wish. How do these writers for children's cartoons so well emulate the way a child would write? I'm not saying that's a good thing. I think children should be exposed to better quality writing. But anyway, Shaga wishes for the power to destroy Atlantica, and the lump conjures up a monster. And holy fuck is it a terrifying monster. Look it, man, the thumbnail for this episode is still going to be Sebastian with his parents, because that's what the episode is about, but this monster, okay, you want to know what this monster is like? Watch the episode, man, because I can't describe this thing. It's freaking scary. Back in Atlantica, Sebastian is assuring his friends that his parents will be gone soon and they can end the charade. And now they want to move in with their son, who's the king. Of course, didn't see that coming the moment it was established that they'd be staying for just a day. No, sir! And the herald, the seahorse herald, comes by with a message that Triton will be gone longer than expected. So Urchin and Ariel, they're stuck doing the fanned by a servant and fed grapes bit. The fake power in the presence of his parents is starting to get to Sebastian's head a little bit, and good lord, Urchin just keeps getting uglier as the episode goes on. Did they lose his model sheet or something? After a time, the parents decide they want to return home to brag about their son to all their friends. After watching Sebastian make a State of the Union address. Getting the entire population of Atlantica in on this, that's going to be a challenge. Emperor Shaga and his 3 guys, because apparently he has only 3 guys, and again, 2 of them giving great vocal performances that I wish I could tell who they were. They begin to approach the kingdom. And, Ariel gathers a crowd and asks them to get in on the scam, and the crowd takes it pretty well, all things considered. They're on board with helping Sebastian make his parents proud. I'm guessing Sebastian's going to be a jerk about it, and they're going to turn against him. No, not so much. They cheer on all his grand, very vain declarations. What's the word I'm looking for? Pompous? I don't know. When a Sharkanian appears among the crowd, Sebastian figures Ariel managed to rope a lone Sharkanian soldier into the deception and pretends to blast the guy with his trident. The soldier is not in on it, and Shaga arrives as well. whips out the magic lump and summons the monster, which starts to smash Atlantica. Fortunately, Triton returns in short order and fights the monster. Not a bad fight scene. This magic lump monster for sure gives Triton a run for his money, and it's only defeated when Ariel and Urchin grab the two halves of the magic lump and suck the monster back into it. The Sharkanians retreat, and Sebastian's parents, still oblivious, remark that Sebastian ought to hire Triton as a guard of some sort. Triton decides not to ask. Sebastian confesses the truth to his parents, and Triton just still doesn't want to get involved. He tells Sebastian to just keep up the being in charge while he goes off to dispose of the magic lump someplace safe. I feel like that happens a lot in this series. Disposing of the magical artifact of the week where no one can ever find it. So Sebastian throws a big banquet, and Triton's yeah, screw this, I'm out of here. Well, gosh, the only guest stars in this episode are Danny Cooksey, Jim Cummings, and Hattie Winston. Cummings was already one of my guesses for who plays the lump monster, but in that case, I have absolutely no idea who played Emperor Shaga's commander and the other random soldier. I could rewind and listen to them again, and wow, absolutely no idea. I mean, with as few options as we have, I guess Ken Mars, he can dabble in some minor parts. I'm actually surprised he hasn't done so much in this series, and maybe Samuel E. Wright can as well. I mean, they are the only other grown men in this episode apart from Jim Cummings. I honestly have no idea. Next episode is called Island of Fear, and the summary says only that it's about pollution. A very short summary, pollution coming toward Atlantica. I don't think I know this one. Let's find out. We open on Ariel at a shipwreck where she finds a purse, half a dinner plate, a set of false teeth, a sock, typical Ariel treasures. Sebastian is leading the Crab Scouts to the beach. I would think that's a place sea creatures try to avoid. I don't think the place where water meets land holds quite as much appeal when you're from the water. They're crabs. I guess they'd like the sun, the air, not so much a merfolk thing. At least crabs have legs for walking. Ariel takes the stuff to Scuttle. He bullshits to her about how complicated humans are. Soon, a trail of smelly green shit starts flowing through the water, making all the fish sick. Scuttle doesn't know what it is, and Sebastian, at least, is quite sure it's human-made. The Crab Scouts go to warn the king, because Ariel wants Sebastian with her while she goes to find the source of the shit. Our three heroes are joined by Scuttle as they find the source, some sort of water wheel, power plant, turbine thingy? It looks like a gothic castle. Is this a Frankenstein deal? Is that what's going on? I don't know what to expect. It fucking is. Sebastian gets himself captured by a blue-skinned, pointy-eared land creature with fiery red hair wearing a long coat who is conducting experiments. Sounds like he's played by Ken Mars. Hey, didn't I just say he could diversify? He's a real voice actor, you know. They didn't have to restrict him to just being Triton all this time. This guy is ready for another crab experiment. His Igor is a mutated crab upon whom this experiment has failed in the past. I'm getting a strong Rankin Bass feel from this guy for some reason. I don't know, maybe it's the wild hair, just the performance. He's here to reinvent the crab. Hey man, you don't gotta do that. Everyone knows crabs are the pinnacle of perfection. Everything evolves into crabs eventually. I've made that joke before. I suppose I should clarify. There's this process called carcinization. See, on the evolutionary tree, we can spot a number of places where one group of crustaceans split off from another. And what we ended up with each time was a crab. Over and over again, different subgroups of crustaceans independently evolved into creatures we'd recognize as crabs. And that kind of became a meme last year, with people joking that the process of carcinization, the process by which many unrelated groups of crabs end up looking very similar, is a sign that the crab is the ultimate perfect life form. So, I suppose if you could improve upon the crab, that would be a pretty big scientific accomplishment. But okay, his objective is to make crabs not only bigger, but also tastier. Sebastian escapes the evil doctor and his army of mutant crabs, as it turns out, and finds himself in a prison where the doctor keeps the ones that don't cooperate. In all these mutant crabs, I'm seeing telltale features of obscure crab species and some other lesser-known crustaceans and crustacean-like creatures. That's a nice touch. I love me some obscure sea creatures, especially deep sea creatures like crabs. They're pretty much aliens already, you know. It makes perfect sense to group their features for alien and mutant monsters. But nothing terrifies Sebastian more than the good doctor's young assistant, A human! At least I assume he's human. Sebastian begs the young boy for mercy, and the boy thinks Sebastian can talk because he's another of Dr. Vile's experiments. Yes, that's his actual name, Dr. Vile. The boy is very sinister, but promises to keep Sebastian unharmed as his companion. Sebastian and the boy play with his toy train set, powered by the electrical energy Dr. Vile harvests from the water wheel. Meanwhile, Ariel and Flounder are attacked by a big hairy crab with long arms, I believe inspired by a Yeti crab? Yeah. Couple other distinct features like that. Like I saw one that had the distinct hooked jaws of an Anomalocaris, one of my favorite prehistoric creatures. Dr. Vile engages the fish trap in his moat, which he uses to feed his crab monsters. Ariel and Flounder are captured. After dinner, the boy, Daniel, has mellowed a bit, and he explains to Sebastian that he's not enthusiastic about his job with Dr. Vile, but his family is struggling. I took a strangely long time to notice the running gag that every time someone says the words crab experiments, they pause to say it very dramatically, and then thunder crashes. Dr. Vile catches Daniel with Sebastian and takes Sebastian back for his crab experiment. Why crabs exclusively? Every evil scientist needs an idiosyncrasy, I guess. Whether it's cheese or sandwiches or I don't know. Dr. Vile is about to pour the mysterious green goo on Sebastian, but Scuttle saves him just in time. They evade the mutant crabs and start to find their way out as the green goo once again starts spilling into the moat, straight at Ariel and Flounder. Ariel throws Flounder over the wall of the fish trap, and together they figure out the gears that move the walls of the trap up and down, and Ariel is free. All four heroes meet outside the fortress. And Sebastian finds himself wanting to save Daniel from the lab. Good thing he had that thought, as they find Dr. Vile is preparing to turn Daniel into a human-crab hybrid. That'll qualify him as a mad scientist for sure. Remembering what Daniel said, that the water wheel is the source of Dr. Vile's power, they seek to destroy it. Daniel mentioned a wrench would do the job. None of them knows what a wrench is, so Ariel grabs the first object she sees from a nearby toolbox. As it happens, that item is a wrench. That's a fun word to say. Wrench, wrench, wrench. It makes you sound manly and also Jewish. Long story short, they jam the water wheel's gears and it explodes. Daniel flees the collapsing castle and Sebastian rushes to meet him. Daniel gives us the moral about not keeping yourself in an abusive situation, even if you need the money, just to walk away. See, I thought the moral was going to be about pollution, but I suppose getting rid of pollution is about on the same political wavelength as creating a world where people can walk away from bad situation because no one needs money so desperately. Back in Atlantica, Triton, the Crab Scouts, and all of Ariel's sisters are watching the skies, so to speak, since the pollution is on the water surface. Triton being the first character in the episode to utter the word pollution. I guess he has experience with such a thing, even though human technology usually isn't at the level Dr. Vile was operating with. Triton surfaces, a big deal as you might imagine, he doesn't like it when people do that, to create a rainstorm that'll dissolve the remaining pollution. As the episode ends, Dr. Vile swears revenge on Sebastian. Sure, buddy, that's a thing that makes sense and will happen. Bye, Dr. Vile, you better fucking not be in any future episodes. So that was bullshit. Very Rankin Bass, as I said. Daniel's macabreness was kind of fun. I like the notion of Sebastian making a human friend, even if it's not continuity friendly with the movie. The friendship was rushed because, this is an episodic half-hour show. And the mutant crabs were genuinely scary, and I very much appreciate, how they incorporated the designs of so many real crustacean species. So this had a lot of fun components, but I don't think it added up to a great picture. Guest actors. Seems the Crab Scouts are still J.D. Daniels, Andy McAfee, and Malachi Pearson, though they appear so briefly I didn't even realize all three of them had lines. And Maurice LaMarche's Scuttle, and from there I had to IMDb. Hal Rail appears again, briefly making me think maybe I was wrong about Ken Mars being Dr. Vile, but no, IMDb agrees with me on that. Daniel was played by a 14-year-old Justin Shankaro, who remains active as a voice actor to this day, though I've never heard of him before. And Whit Hertford is in the credits. IMDb credits him as one of the Crab Scouts, marking the second time Malachi Pearson has not received IMDb credit for that role. So, not sure who Whit Hertford or Hal Rail play in this episode. Let's move on. And okay, here it is. I've been waiting for it. I know you've been waiting for it. It's Land of the Motherfucking Dinosaurs. A truly infamous episode of the series. So often it pops up into people's heads as a memory from their childhood, and they're like, huh, that happened, right? That was a real episode. I didn't hallucinate it when I ate paint chips. It's very real. I saw it probably not the day it aired. I was 2, so I likely saw a rerun, but it was probably an early rerun. I was very very young for sure. Maybe 4. I remember being that 4-year-old kid and being pretty taken aback by that's not how dinosaurs work. What is happening? But yeah, I haven't seen the episode since then, since I was very, very tiny. Let's see if it's as nuts as we remember. Follow me! I get the feeling this episode is going to get hits from people searching YouTube for this episode. Based on my analytics, that's where I get a lot of hits. People searching for popular episodes. You can't find episodes of the show by searching YouTube, people. That's illegal. Hey, whatever works, man. The video gets credit for the hit when you listen for 20 seconds and then leave. That's all bluster. I don't like that. I want people to listen to these videos for real, man. I'd like that. I feel like we haven't seen Dudley in a long time. Just a thought, because he appears in the new title sequence. Was he in season 2 at all? I forget. Our episode begins. Ariel and Flounder doing their usual exploring when they find an ancient pre-Atlantican map to the lost island of Prehistoria up in the frozen north. She makes a copy of the map and wonders how she can get that far. For a journey as long as this one, she needs Triton's okay. Hey, there's Dudley, speak of the devil. Meanwhile, Sebastian is working on a one-crab band act while riding around on a non-anthropomorphic sea turtle right there in the same scene as Dudley. I hate it when they do that, man. It's so jarring. You can't help but question the logic. You'd think Disney would ease up on that sort of thing after so many decades of the whole goofy Pluto thing. And the subplot going on that might coincidentally help Ariel get her plot going, that would be Triton having trouble concentrating because Sebastian is being overly helpful. I feel like that's been done. For a show with only 31 episodes, it does kind of repeat itself a lot. Ariel approaches Triton later that day. He's rather exhausted and tense. Ariel has her in to tell him he needs a vacation to the Winterland Resort up north. He's all for it. The entire family, plus Dudley and Flounder, pack up into a big mobile home-style chariot, leaving in the middle of the night so as to ditch Sebastian, which fails. He heard about it. And I think, let's see, which sister is the brunette with the high ponytail? Ariel has 2 sisters by that description. Which is the brunette with the high ponytail who wears blue? That would be Aquata, voiced by Cheryl Bernstein, according to the sources about the TV show. I think this is the first time she's ever had a line. Yeah, I'm not sure if they're ever gonna fit in all 6 sisters actually having the voice actresses all the sources claim they do. I'm remembering a lot of Sebastian's antics from this episode. I guess it's not just the dinosaur stuff that stuck with me from childhood. During a scene where they're unpacking up in their hotel room at the resort, 2 more sisters get lines. Atina, who was not voiced by Kath Soucie like she was before in that moment. In previous episodes, both Atina and Adela were voiced by Kath Soucie, but the sources say Adela was voiced by Sherry Lynn. Meanwhile, Alana also got a line and was quite distinctively Kimmy Robertson, just like when she had her big spotlight moment in E-Electric City. Okay, that's half of the sisters speaking in this episode. Atina, Alana, and for the first time, Aquata. And as I mentioned, we'd had lines before from Adela, and Arista, played by Mary Kay Bergman, is the only sister to really have been a major recurring character in the show. That leaves Andrina, allegedly played by Kathy Cavadini. I don't recall if she's gotten any dialogue in the series yet. I guess I'll watch out for that. So they're on vacation at the Hot Springs Spa Resort up in the north, and Sebastian is still bugging the crap out of Triton. Meanwhile, Ariel and Flounder search for Prehistoria, and they find it. Holy shit, dozens of dinosaurs frozen in the ice. I thought there were only 4. I didn't know it was a whole island full of them. Sweet! Well, maybe only 4 get unfrozen and rampage and stuff. Soon Flounder himself gets frozen in ice, and Ariel figures he can be freed with the trident. Triton decides to maybe exhaust Sebastian by taking a hike to the North Pole. Then he can start getting some actual peace. In the hot springs, Alright, we're going into SpongeBob territory here. With the water, underwater, I mean, hot springs I get. It might be a water-like substance with a different density. Therefore, you can enter it while underwater. But then, when Arista and Alana start talking about the cute lifeguard at the pool, that's some SpongeBob shit. Okay, now Atina is voiced by Kath Susie again. Conveniently, Triton forgot to bring the trident on the hike. Ariel fights past her sisters to steal the trident and go save Flounder. So, Triton, Sebastian, and Dudley are passing beneath the polar ice caps. See, because you can do that. In the original novel of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, there's a bit where the submarine passes under the South Pole. You can't do that. We know now that Antarctica is a continent, but the Arctic, it's just ice. So there's ocean underneath. Isn't that kind of weird that there was a time when we, as humanity, didn't know that? It's such basic knowledge now, that the South Pole has a continent under it and the North Pole has an ocean. But we still didn't know that when 20,000 Leagues was written in the 1870s. Humans actually knowing shit is a pretty recent development, isn't it? Ariel uses the trident to thaw out Flounder, and then impulsively goes to thaw out the dinosaurs, wanting them to live their lives. We are well over halfway through the episode at this point. Land of the Dinosaurs, my ass. Typical monster movie, having so little in the way of the actual monster. So she thaws out the dinosaurs. They look like shit. Straight out of Fantasia, which was groundbreaking and super scientifically accurate in the 1940s, and obviously still dazzlingly animated today. But you can do better dinosaur designs than that in the 90s, people. They look like cheap plastic toys, and without the super good animation that Fantasia had, it's just, there's no excuse. And yes, the weird-ass part everyone thinks they remember is absolutely true. A handful of the dinosaurs stride right into the water and walk around underwater as if they can breathe it, and they're strong enough to move in water exactly as if it was air. Why? Well, because they wouldn't pose much of a threat to our fully aquatic main characters if they couldn't, now could they? 3 of the dinosaurs start marching straight for the resort. A Tyrannosaurus, a Triceratops, and a Stegosaurus. Back on the island, there were also a number of sauropods. If you're going to have dinosaurs, those will be the 4 dinosaurs you want to have. Those are the main ones, the super popular species, the ones every child knows. Why? I guess because they're cool and fairly straightforward. They're the 4 species that are the image that generally comes to mind whenever you hear the word dinosaurs. Incidentally, an actual team consisting of a Tyrannosaurus, Triceratops, Stegosaurus, and sauropod isn't really a thing that could happen. Stegosaurus and all the big notable sauropods existed in the Jurassic, while Tyrannosaurus and Triceratops were around much later in the Cretaceous period. The time that passed between the extinction of the Stegosaurus and the appearance of the Tyrannosaurus far exceeds the time separating the extinction of the Tyrannosaurus from the appearance of humans. Isn't that a mindfuck? Triton is about to snap at Sebastian about why he's so frazzled and stressed lately when the dinosaurs pass by and start smashing up the resort, purely for shits and giggles, I guess. This is also a part I remember as a kid. It's probably happened in earlier episodes, but I remember noticing that when the merfolk flee in terror, they yell swim instead of run, which obviously makes total sense. It's just yelling run. It just has so much more impact than yelling swim. Better vowel sound, I guess, plus swim refers to aquatic locomotion of any speed. There's not much sense of urgency. The migrating humpback whales fight the dinosaurs off, which, fucking thumbnail, man. If I can find a good freeze frame of the whales fighting the dinosaurs, well, you can see for yourself whether I achieved that or not. If not, I'll probably go with the bit where the 3 dinosaurs are heading for the resort. That image always stuck with me, though I could have sworn I remember that one of the sauropods was with them the whole time, that it was 4 dinosaurs. Guess I was mistaken. And, maybe that shot wouldn't make for a good thumbnail. Their backs are always to the camera in those moments. I don't know, man. I'll find some thumbnail from the episode that fully conveys the bizarreness of underwater dinosaurs. If I can, man. It's hard. It's hard to find a freeze frame of an action scene in animation because the individual frames look so goofy. They only look good when they're moving, so that's why most of my freeze frames are just sitting around talking scenes. Triton reclaims his trident from Ariel and agrees with her that freeing the dinosaurs from their icy prison was the philanthropic thing to do. He thaws out the entire island of Prehistoria, giving them the habitat they need. The musical score in this episode, whenever the dinosaurs are around, it's a very whimsical theme that elegantly combines the musical sense of Jurassic Park and primarily The Land Before Time. I guess the makers of this episode really liked what Universal Studios was doing with dinosaurs. Oh, and that's probably mentioned. They throw in a little line. Triton explains that it's underwater hot springs that used to heat the island of Prehistoria, and that he's used his trident to reactivate those, hence why there's a lush tropical dinosaur continent so close to the North Pole. I like that. Good hand wave, good explanation. That might be something I can use. So with the resort back in order, apparently, trident power, you can do that. You can repair things. Ariel tends to Flounder, who is still, sick and wiped out from his experience being frozen. Well, Sebastian was injured in the dinosaur attack, and now Triton has to take care of him, making him an annoyance in a completely new and different way. That certainly was something, but I'll have to say no, it wasn't as insane as we all remember. When we watch it again and we expect the fully submerged dinosaurs, everything else is just a pretty standard issue rampage that doesn't last nearly long enough. The dinosaurs don't get thought out until 16 minutes into the 22-minute episode. I'm a wee bit disappointed. I really wanted my mind blown there. Voice cast, we have our 4 main actors. Flounder, still voiced by Eden Gross. The whole Bradley Pierce thing might just be a myth. Then there's the 4 actresses I mentioned who play the 4 of Ariel's 6 sisters who get lines in this episode. Potentially the 4 actresses who play the only 5 sisters who get dialogue in the series. Let's see if Andrina ever manages to get a speaking part. And finally, Frank Welker. I guess he was the motherfucking dinosaurs. He's so good, Sometimes I listen to a creature and I can tell it's Frank Welker, and it is. And sometimes I just hear a creature and it never once occurs to me that it might be a human voice actor behind it, and then he pops up in the credits, like now. And sometimes I feel sure I recognize his distinct creature vocal cadences, and it turns out there is no voice actor behind that character at all. I get now why so many creature vocals in film and animation are falsely attributed to him. In conclusion, I have to say, Season 3 is getting silly. Now, no one likes a good laugh more than I do, but this program has become far too silly, and I don't actually remember how the Colonel bit goes, I'm sorry. But this was a lot of fun, a bit of nostalgia, whole lot of ridiculousness, and it's going to be a little bit bittersweet when I finish this series. Not too bitter. I'm very, very much looking forward to finally bringing you my retrospectives on gargoyles. Let's head in that direction. I don't think I mentioned Keys and Kingdoms once while discussing these episodes, except in that brief ad-libbed bit where I remembered the hot springs beneath Prehistoria. It's, well, again, that's what the final episode of the retrospective is for me to listen back to what I've said about the episodes and consolidate everything learned over the course of the series that might relate to Keys and Kingdoms, that might become an element of the Keys and Kingdoms universe or storytelling style. That being said, bring on the Patreon thingy. TAPAS and Stuff Productions is brought to you by our supporters on Patreon, including Knight Sadie Allen.